So I was just hoping I could just go. You're gonna take me home, right?
You're going to take me home? That's a question that even still today it's hard to hear that question, because we're already living, my mother and I and my family, we're living with some guilt, some regret, some sadness mixed with certainty and understanding the fact that my father belongs in the senior center, and not just for him and his well-being and safety, but for his family as well. For us to sustain any type of relationship with my father, this had to be done. And that's just one reason. It was the hardest thing we ever had to do, was to admit my father into a senior center, which was the last thought on our minds. We never thought it would come to that. Maybe it would, but not for years. But the thing about that is, you don't realize just how strong you are or how capable you are until that moment comes where you find yourself spiraling out of control and you're in harm's way. You're at risk, and you could potentially become a victim in all of this. You could become you could perish because of this illness. That's how devastating it is. And my mother, I witnessed this firsthand. No one knows like I know what my mother had gone through with her husband, with my father. It was rough. It was devastating. You want to talk about going into a depression? That's what it'll do to you as a caregiver. And my mother was the primary caregiver in this situation, and it was overwhelming. Those who are living with someone who has dementia, they can understand what I'm talking about. Those who do not have a loved one in their house with dementia, they don't understand. So it's easy for them or anyone to assume, well, you could do that. You don't seem that bad. You don't realize what's going on behind closed doors. It's crazy. It is crazy. If you really want to learn and understand, please do the research. Look into it. There's a lot of literature online that'll show you exactly what people are going through and how people have literally perished because of their loved one having dementia. It's devastating. This is no easy task, and not everyone is the same. Not every loved one with dementia is the same. So my mother, who has herniated discs, who's older, who's already been through so many different adversities in her own life with dealing with death, she has had a hefty dose of death on her side of the family, which has already beaten her down. And now that she's much older, this is a whole nother beast to contend with. To do it for as long as she has, my hat goes off to her, because I know for me, I'm a younger guy. I'm in shape. I feel like I have very good patience, and it was beating me up as well to be with my father and him be the way that he was. He was just so overwhelming. But we would love nothing more than to have my father back at home, and my mother still wrestles with that thought. It's tugging on her heart every single day. From the moment she wakes up to the moment she goes to bed, it's in her mind, it's in her heart. She wants her husband back. The memories, everything in her life, it reminds her of her husband. She can't get the thought out of her head, but she knows, and I have to remind her once in a while, that, Mom, listen, you have gone through so much while Dad was in the house. You know how it was. So if it goes back to that, you could become sick yourself, and it's not worth it. This is a beautiful thing they have going on. Although it's painful at times, it's not easy, and it's not how we planned it. It is the best alternative that we have available to us, and we're able to sustain a relationship with my father, with her husband. And we have to look at it that way. We have to be optimistic. And I feel like we're fortunate, we're blessed that we have this resource that enables us to carry on with living life the best we can without being overwhelmed and maintain some kind of healthy way of living, both mentally, physically, emotionally. But it's not easy. And every time my father asks that question, it tugs on our hearts. So I can empathize with my mother. My heart goes out to her, and I look up to her for being as strong as she's been, and all that she's been through, and still going through these challenges. She was with my father even before he was diagnosed at the age of 64. He was sick. He was sick at the age of 60. Even in his late 50s, he was struggling, and he needed my mother for certain things. So it was a good 10 years of this dementia, I would say, that my mother was just like, she was contending with it. And over time, it wears you down, wears you down, wears you down. So there was a point in time I thought to myself, what is my mother doing? How could she do that? How could she put my father in the senior center? But then that thought quickly left. That's just a natural human reaction to something like that. But I knew better that, wait a minute, I can't be selfish. I can't be thinking that just because my mother's doing this, that she has no right to do that. Because I felt it myself. And I was on board with the idea. Only because I was worried about my father's safety, like my mother, and his well-being, and our well-being, and our health as well. So you don't know what the future holds until you live it. And we lived it, and now looking back on it, we made the right decision. But this is just a message. This is just information for anyone who's watching this and you're contemplating this whole thing. Maybe you can gain something from what I'm saying and what we're doing in our lives to help cope with our father, our husband, our brother, our loved one, whomever it may be in your household that has dementia, how we cope with it, how we deal with it. And maybe you're on the fence about making the decision. It's not easy. It's so hard. But it's tough.